I cheated on my husband on our 8th anniversary trip, then made him sleep on the hotel lobby couch while I was upstairs with someone else. I thought I could gaslight my way out of it like every other argument, but 30 days later a judge told me I was leaving the marriage with only my car, my clothes, and that same couch. Now my job, my family, and my entire reputation are collapsing around me, and somehow I'm still acting surprised every time a new consequence hits. I know how this sounds, but I honestly did not think cheating on my husband during our 8th anniversary trip would blow my whole life up like this. We were supposed to be in that hotel for a week, reconnecting or whatever, and yeah, I made him sleep on the lobby couch because he was getting on my nerves and I wanted space. I did not expect him to just take it, not argue, not react, and then 30 days later sit across from me in a divorce office while a stranger told me I was getting only my car, my clothes, and that same ugly lobby couch. I did not think my job would be dragged into it. I did not think my parents and siblings would say, "Your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enable your bad choices," like I was some stranger. I really thought I could just say sorry and we would move on. Now every day something new drops on my head and I feel like I am the only one shocked by any of it. The couch thing started because he was being too quiet. That whole first anniversary night he barely talked at dinner, just nodded while I ordered the expensive stuff. I took it as him being ungrateful, so when we got back to the room and he tried to touch me, I snapped. I told him, "You have been killing the vibe all day, go sleep on the damn couch in the lobby if you want to sulk." He just looked at me, grabbed his pillow and walked out. He did not argue, did not say, "This is our anniversary," nothing. That silence annoyed me more than if he had yelled, so I texted his cousin and said I was free for the night. That was the first time it happened in that hotel. I really told myself it was a moment, not a pattern, and I kept repeating that in my head even when it turned into 3 nights and then the whole week. I know everyone thinks that cheating is the main thing, but honestly what shook me was how fast he must have moved after. On the last day of the trip he came back up to the room right before checkout, sat on the edge of the bed and said, "You ready to go?" Like nothing happened. I thought, okay, maybe he did not suspect anything. We drove home, he carried the bags in, kissed my forehead, and went to sleep in the guest room. No fight, no questions. I told myself he was just being dramatic. I went back to work like normal the next day and posted a cute anniversary picture on my story. He did not like it. I thought that was petty, not serious. Things only started feeling off when I woke up one morning and his whole side of the closet was empty. No work shirts, no shoes, no charger on his nightstand. His toothbrush was gone. I walked through the apartment and saw the couch from the hotel lobby sitting in the living room. The same couch I had made him sleep on. It had a delivery tag on it with his name. I laughed at first because I thought it was some dark joke. He left a folded paper on the table. It was a copy of our hotel bill with the dates circled and a screen print of security footage from the hallway with me and his cousin going into the room together. On the bottom he had written, "I slept just fine." That was it. No screaming, no "you ruined my life," nothing. Just that. How was I supposed to know he would go that far over one mistake? How was I supposed to know he would not give me a chance to explain? How was I supposed to know he would stay quiet for 30 days and then drop a divorce on my head like that? The next consequence hit when the divorce paperwork came. I thought we would talk first, maybe do counseling. Instead, a process server knocked on my door while I had leftover takeout in my mouth. I opened it in pajamas. He handed me a stack of papers and said my full name like I was in trouble at school. The petition had every detail listed. The hotel dates. Mention of marital misconduct. Notes about emotional cruelty for making him sleep on a public couch during our anniversary week. He had already listed all the assets and even put in there that the hotel couch had been legally purchased and delivered to him. It was in the property section as sofa from anniversary lobby. I honestly thought the court would laugh at that part and tell him he was being dramatic. Instead, that couch ended up being one of the 3 things they assigned to me. I did not think that was possible. When I got to the mediation meeting, I tried to play it calm. I wore my best work blazer, did my hair, smiled. He showed up in a plain shirt and looked right through me. The mediator read off the split. He keeps the house, retirement, savings. You receive your car, your personal clothing, and the couch. I laughed out loud. I said, "That is ridiculous, I was a wife, not a guest." The mediator looked uncomfortable and said, "You waived a lot of rights in the prenup." I said, "What prenup?" He slid over a copy with my signature. I recognized it immediately. It was that life insurance paperwork he had me sign the year before when he said he wanted to be responsible. I signed it half asleep. My own signature absolutely ruined my argument in 5 seconds. Was I really supposed to read every paper he ever put in front of me? Was I really supposed to know that document had that kind of power? Was I really supposed to lose almost everything over one stupid decision on a trip? His lawyer stayed calm the whole time. When I tried to argue about the account balances, she said, "Your employment will allow you to rebuild." I said, Yeah, I have a stable position. 2 days later, HR called me into a meeting. They had a printed copy of my anniversary story from some anonymous account describing the cheating. Someone at work had recognized details. They did not care about the affair itself outside of gossip, but they used it as leverage to review my conduct and teamwork. I had been late, snappy with coworkers, and apparently running personal calls during meetings. They gave me a written warning and removed me from a big project. I did not think they had the right to stack all that at once. I reminded them I had been there for years. My manager said, "That does not erase patterns." My parents heard about everything before I could spin it. My sister sent me a screenshot from some family group chat where my aunt was asking if the story online was about me. I tried to call my mom and start with, "You know how people exaggerate." She did not let me finish. She said, "Your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enable your bad choices." My dad took the phone and said, "You made him sleep on a hotel couch during his anniversary week. Who raised you?" I said, "You did," as a joke. He did not laugh. He said, "Then I failed somewhere." That hurt more than the divorce paper. I thought at least I would have my friends. The ones who always said they hated men and understood me. When I told them my side, they did that thing where they stay quiet and just look at each other. One of them finally said, "So you cheated during your anniversary trip, made him sleep in public, and now you are upset because you only got a couch." I said, "And my car and clothes, don't act like that is nothing." Another friend asked, "What were you expecting? A parade?" By the end of the night they were distant. The next day I saw one of them posted a story with him tagged, saying, "Protect men who move in silence." That felt like betrayal, even though logically it made sense. I asked the HR if I could work from home more, because I did not feel comfortable being around people after all the gossip. They denied it. Said my role required in-person collaboration. That week they moved my desk closer to the hallway, right where everyone walks by. I heard my name more than once. "That's her. That's the couch wife." Someone actually called me couch queen under their breath. I spun around and said, "Say it louder if you bold," but no one owned it. I sat back down and realized I was literally fighting over a nickname tied to a piece of furniture I did not even want. I tried to get my ex to talk to me outside the legal stuff. I called once, and he answered by accident. I heard his voice say, "I have nothing to say to you outside the process," and then he hung up. I texted him, "We were together 8 years, that has to mean something." He did not reply. Instead, I got an email from his lawyer reminding me that direct contact was not recommended and could complicate proceedings. The fact they really used professional language to tell me not to text my own husband made me feel like I was some stranger trying to scam him. When the final divorce hearing came, I wore the same blazer, but it felt heavier. The judge read the settlement out like it was obvious. I tried to argue again, saying I had put in emotional labor, that I had supported his career. The judge looked over the papers and said, "You agreed to this arrangement when you signed these documents. It is binding." Afterward, I stood in the hallway with my folder while he walked past with his lawyer. He nodded once at me. Not kind, not cruel. Just final. I said, "That couch is ugly, you know." He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You picked it." Then he walked away. I loaded my clothes into my car and went back to the apartment one last time. The place was empty except for boxes labeled with his name and one ugly couch sitting in the middle of the living room with a note on it. "Enjoy your throne." I wanted to flip it just out of spite, but I ended up sitting on it instead. The springs were harder than I remembered. I thought about him lying on it in that hotel lobby while I was upstairs with someone else. I told myself back then that he was being dramatic. Sitting on it now, I realized he had done all his grieving while everyone thought nothing was wrong. I kept asking myself why nobody was giving me grace. Why nobody was saying, "People make mistakes, just heal and move on." I kept waiting for someone to tell me it was just a rough patch. Instead, every week another layer of consequence shows up like a bill I forgot to pay, and I am the only one still acting surprised. The first week alone with the couch felt like a punishment I did not sign up for. I put it right in the middle of the living room because I refused to push it against a wall like some leftover. I sat on it to eat, to scroll, to cry, to pretend I was not bothered. The cushion still smelled like hotel lobby cleaner. I left little piles of clothes around it, trying to make it feel like a normal home, but all I could see was him walking away from it without looking back. Rent hit my account and it cleared that time, but the number in my bank dropped so low I turned off notifications. I kept telling myself I would bounce back, that my job was solid and I was too smart to actually fall all the way down. A few days later, payroll messed up my direct deposit. That is what I told myself anyway. I checked my bank and the number was lower than usual. I emailed HR. They called me in and said my position was being restructured, and that they had adjusted my salary to reflect updated responsibilities. I said, "What responsibilities? I'm doing the same work." My manager looked annoyed and said, "You lost your team lead role." News to me. They had demoted me quietly, hidden it under restructuring, and cut my pay by a big chunk. I sat on that couch that night and stared at the wall thinking, how am I supposed to keep my apartment now? How am I supposed to rebuild with less money? How is this fair when people cheat every day and still keep everything? 2 weeks after that, my mom sent a long text saying the family was having a cookout for him to support him after the divorce. I was not invited. My sister posted pictures. Everyone smiling, hugging him, standing around a grill like he was the one who got hit by a bus, not me. I commented a single heart on one of the pictures and my cousin replied, "Read the room." Later that night my mom called just to say, "We love you, but your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enabling your bad choices." She used the exact phrase like she had been practicing it. Then she added, "He came to us hurt and quiet, you came to us defensive. That matters." I hung up and shoved my face into the couch cushion so no one would hear me yell into it. The next consequence did not even come from family, it came from a group chat at work. Someone added me by accident, or maybe on purpose, to a hallway chat. I saw my name right away. "I can't believe she did that to him on their anniversary," one person said. Another replied, "She still walks around like the victim." Someone else posted a meme of a couch with a crown on it. My stomach dropped. I typed, "You know I can see this, right?" The chat went silent, then I got removed from the group. 10 minutes later, HR emailed me about professional boundaries and maintaining a positive environment. They said maybe I should take a leave of absence if I felt targeted. I wanted to shout that I was the one being bullied, that I was the one under attack. Why was I suddenly the problem for reacting to them talking about me? Why was I supposed to just let everyone clown me? Why was no one stepping in to tell them they were out of line? I did not take a leave. I needed the check. But I did start coming in late and leaving as soon as I could, hiding at my desk behind a half wall with my headphones on. The friend I used to eat lunch with moved to another table without saying why. When I brought it up, she said, "It is just less drama over here." She said drama like it was something I had poured on myself like perfume. A week later, my manager called me and said my engagement had decreased and clients had complained about my tone. I tried to defend myself, saying I had personal stuff going on. She said, "We all have personal stuff, you are not the only one with a life." That night I lay sideways on the couch because the spring bar in the middle hurt my back if I stayed straight, and I wondered how I had become the difficult one at a job where I used to be the reliable one. The affair partner tried to slide back in after the divorce finalized. He texted, "So you single now or what?" Like he had just bumped into me at a bar. I told him everything that had happened, expecting at least some guilt. He texted back, "Damn, you really blew it," and then, "We should link up though, might as well have fun." I saw red. I said, "You were part of this." He replied, "You the one who was married?" My hands shook so hard I dropped my phone on the couch. I asked myself how I could have ever picked someone like that over the man who actually married me, how I could have thought that was exciting, how I could still be the one losing everything while he joked about it like a hookup story. When my lease came up for renewal, I assumed it would be fine. I had never missed a payment. I walked into the office confident. The landlord pulled up my file and then pulled up another screen. "We got a reference from your ex," he said. I did not even know they could do that. He had listed me as high conflict and wrote a note about emotional volatility and bringing non-approved guests during long stays. The landlord said, "We just want a quiet building." Then he told me they would not be renewing. I asked if he was serious. He said, "You have 60 days to vacate." I went home and flopped onto the couch like it was a raft in the middle of the ocean, and I kept thinking, how do you get rejected from an apartment you already live in? How do you have nowhere to go after 8 years of marriage? How is it that a grown woman ends up arguing with a landlord about a personality note her ex wrote? The weirder part was the couch started becoming the only stable thing I had. Everything else was shifting. Work was shaky, housing was crumbling, family was distancing, friends were fading. The couch stayed. I dragged it across the floor myself one night so I could sleep right under the air vent. The sound it made scraping the floor made the downstairs neighbor bang on the ceiling with a broom, yelling, "Some of us have jobs." The next day, a notice went up about noise complaints. I laughed, because what else could I do? I sat on the couch, opened my phone, and tried to start a small TikTok account called Couch Survival, where I talked about rebuilding after divorce from that couch. I thought maybe if I made content out of it, the story would feel less pathetic and more interesting. The first video got a few pity likes. Then some genius commented, "Pretty sure you are the anniversary couch cheater from that thread." Views shot up, but not the good kind. Within a week, my face was being stitched into videos of people recapping my whole situation like a cautionary tale. "This is why you do not play with quiet men," one person said over a screenshot of a description that sounded exactly like me. Another video titled, "The Girl Who Made Her Husband Sleep in the Hotel Lobby Couch While She Cheated on Him," got hundreds of comments calling me every name they could think of without saying damn or hell. My followers went up but every comment dragged me. I tried to clap back in one comment, saying, "You do not know the full story." Someone replied, "We know enough. My job has a social media policy." HR sent me another email with a screenshot asking if the account was mine. I stared at the couch and asked myself if turning it into content had just made my life worse, if trying to control the narrative only gave people more to point at, if any version of the story would have kept me from being the villain in their eyes. 2 weeks later, the company called me in for a final discussion. I sat in a small room with my manager and someone from HR. They said my recent online presence, combined with complaints about my attitude, was not aligning with company values. I said, "So I am losing my job because my marriage failed?" They said, "We are terminating based on a pattern of behavior and impact on the workplace." I felt my face get hot, but I kept my voice level. "You know I need this job," I said. My manager looked down and said, "I'm sorry." HR slid a packet toward me with my last paycheck details. Sitting on my couch that night, staring at the termination papers, I realized I did not even have a desk to go to anymore. That couch was officially my office, my bed, my dining chair, my whole life compressed into one piece of furniture I never even liked. I called my sister, thinking maybe losing the job would earn me some sympathy. I said, "They really fired me over vibes." She said, "No, they fired you over consequences." I asked if I could stay with her for a while once my lease ended, at least until I found something new. She said, "I already told you, your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enabling your bad choices." Hearing those same words again, like a script, made me want to throw my phone at the wall. Instead I shoved it between the couch cushions so hard I heard something crack. I pulled it back out and the screen was half black. I sat there with a half-dead phone and a half-empty bank account wondering when exactly everyone had agreed I was on my own, when exactly I had been voted most likely to sleep on a couch for real, when exactly I turned from daughter and sister into a walking warning sign. The stranger thing was how attached I became to objects. The couch, my car, my clothes. Those were the only things the court said were mine, so I started treating them like they were sacred even while they were falling apart. I vacuumed the couch twice a day. I wiped the dashboard of my car with leftover wipes from the apartment cleaning kit. I folded my clothes into neat stacks and lined them along the wall near the couch like a clothing store display. I told myself I was being organized. In reality, I was building a little museum of things I have left. I caught myself talking to the couch once, saying, "At least you stayed." I laughed out loud and then stopped, realizing that sounded like something from a movie about a person losing it in slow motion. The 60 days passed faster than I thought. I applied for cheaper apartments. Every time they asked for references, my ex's note popped up or the job loss timeline raised questions. A leasing agent actually said, "We prefer stable applicants," while staring at a screen with my entire mess summarized on it. I offered to pay a bigger deposit. She said, "It is not just about money." I walked back to my place, sat on the couch and realized there was a real chance I would end up with my car and that couch and nowhere to put either. I wondered how far I could push denial before I had to admit I was sliding towards something worse than just an ugly piece of furniture and a broken marriage, and I could feel something bigger waiting just outside the frame of my little living room, ready to shove me off the edge. The day the movers came for his stuff was the same day I got the final eviction notice taped to my door in red letters. I thought I had more time. I really believed something would magically fall into place, that a last-minute approval would come through or my parents would soften. Instead I watched strangers carry out the last of his boxes while another stranger took pictures of my empty fridge and the peeling paint for the property file. I tried to joke with the mover, said, "At least I got the couch," and he just looked at it and said, "That thing?" like it was trash. When the landlord came to do the walkthrough, he stood in the doorway and said, "Remember, you need to be fully out by the end of the week. No extensions." I said, "You can't give me even a few extra days." He shook his head. "You hit 60. I closed the door behind him and sat on the couch again, staring at the eviction paper on the floor. How was I supposed to move a whole life in a couch with no help? Where was I supposed to put anything? Why did no one care that I was trying? I started calling storage places. The prices made my stomach twist. I could barely cover a month, but I clung to the idea that if I could at least store the couch and my clothes, everything else could be figured out later. One place said they had a special and I almost cried from relief, until the woman asked for proof of income and a card that was not prepaid. I told her I had just left a job. She said, "We need stability." I hung up before I yelled. I tried to recruit 2 old friends to help me move. One said she was out of town. I saw her post from a bar that night. The other said, "I don't do heavy lifting for people who never listened," which felt personal and unnecessary. In the end I dragged the couch toward the door by myself, the fabric burning my hands, the legs scratching the floor. I got it to the hallway before realizing it did not fit in the elevator. I just stared at it, half in, half out, and wondered if even the building was against me now. I decided I would take the couch apart. I did not have tools, so I used a butter knife and rage. I unscrewed what I could, then yanked hard until one arm ripped off with a loud crack. The neighbor opened his door and watched me for a full minute. "You good?" he asked. I said, "I'm moving." He said, "Looks like it." He shut his door again. By the time I got the couch frame into pieces small enough to fit, there were wood splinters and stuffing everywhere. I told myself I would reassemble it at the next place, even though I had no place lined up. When I finally got it downstairs in my car, the entire back seat was full of couch parts and my trunk was stuffed with clothes. There was no room left for anything else. I looked at the piled pieces and thought, how did I end up breaking down the only asset I got in the divorce? How was this supposed to be symbolic of a fresh start? How did the one thing that was mine become a puzzle I could not even fix? The night before I had to turn in my keys, I called my parents again. I said, "I'm actually going to be on the street if I do not have somewhere to park this car." My mom sighed into the phone for a long time. "We told you, your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enabling your bad choices." I said, "So you are okay with your daughter sleeping in a car?" She said, "No, but your sister has kids, we have neighbors, and you refused to listen before." My dad got on and said, "You still not owning what you did, you still talking like this just happened to you." I snapped and said, "Fine, forget it, enjoy your peaceful life." I hung up and immediately regretted the tone, but I also felt something close inside me. Even if they had said yes at that point, I do not think I would have gone. Pride and stupidity feel the same when you are tired. I parked behind a 24-hour grocery store that first night after the move. All my clothes, my last dishes, and the couch pieces were wedged into every corner of the car. I tilted the driver's seat back and tried to sleep with my knees curled up. Every time a security guard's flashlight passed, I held my breath and pretended I was not there. In the morning my back hurt so much I could barely straighten up. I went inside, used the bathroom sink to wash my face, and bought the cheapest ramen they had. I did not have a way to heat water, so I poured bottled water into the styrofoam and waited a long time, eating the noodles half crunchy. I thought about how I used to complain when my ex forgot to warm up my coffee, and now I was sitting in a car chewing lukewarm ramen next to a broken couch I fought a judge for. On day 3 of car living, a cop tapped on my window before sunrise. I jolted awake. He shined a light in and asked, "You staying here?" I said, "Just for a bit." He asked for my license and ran it. He came back and said, "You cannot sleep here, the store called us." I asked, "Can I just have until the end of the week?" He shook his head. "You need to move along now." I turned the car on and felt panic pushing against my throat. I started driving with no destination, circling blocks, feeling stupid for thinking I could just stay invisible. I kept hearing my sister's voice from our last call, "You always assume someone will bend the rules for you." She was right. I just never thought that truth would catch up to me this hard. I tried to get help from a local resource center. They had a list of shelters and wait lists. When I told a woman at the desk I had a car and a couch frame and clothes, she said, "You might have to choose what to keep." I stared at her like she had spoken another language. "I only have 3 things," I said. She said, "Most people here have a backpack." The reality of that hit in a way courts and HR meetings had not. I argued anyway. "The couch is part of my story," I said. She did not blink. "Your story will not matter if you are sleeping outside." I left without putting my name down. I told myself I was not shelter level yet, that I would figure it out. The delusion tasted better than the fear. A week later my car started making a grinding sound whenever I turned. I ignored it. The check engine light came on. I ignored that too. I got a notice in my email that my car payment was past due. I thought I could float it a little, like I used to. Then a second notice came with the word repossession in it. I called the finance company and tried to explain, told them I was in transition. The woman on the phone said, "So are we, toward recovering the vehicle." She gave me a number that I would need to pay to stop action. It might as well have been $1 million. That night I sat in the driver's seat and placed my hand on the steering wheel and on one of the couch pieces in the back, and I realized I could actually lose both in one move. I finally broke down and went back to my friend who had pulled away when the divorce drama got public. I texted her and said, "I'm living in my car with my divorce couch, I need a shower and a place to think." She responded, "This sounds like a joke." I said, "It is not." She let me come over on the condition that I did not bring the couch pieces into her house. When I got there, she stood in the doorway and looked me up and down. "You look bad," she said. I said, "Thanks." She let me shower, gave me clean towels, and made a pot of ramen. We sat at her table and I told her everything. Eviction, job loss, car notices. She shook her head and said, "I kept telling you to stop playing victim and fix it early. You waited until it was on fire." I wanted to defend myself, but even my excuses sounded thin. I asked if I could sleep on her couch just for one night. She said, "My boyfriend said he is not comfortable with that." I laughed because the idea of me being a threat to anyone right now was absurd. She did not laugh with me. Things got even more bizarre when I checked my email from her Wi-Fi and saw a message from a podcast producer. The subject line was your story. They wanted to interview me for a relationship drama episode. They said they had heard through mutual contacts about the anniversary trip, the lobby couch, the divorce settlement, the job fallout. They offered a small payment. I felt a weird wave of hope. I thought, maybe this is how I turn it around, maybe if people hear my side, they will understand I am not a monster. My friend said, "You really thinking of going on there and telling them you made him sleep in public while you cheated, and expecting sympathy?" I said, "People love messy stories." She said, "They love them because they can judge." I ignored her warning and answered the email anyway, saying I was interested. The podcast recording happened over video from her kitchen, because I did not want them to see my car. They asked very detailed questions. Why did you make him sleep on the lobby couch? What did you feel when you texted the other guy? How did you react when you only got the couch in the divorce? I tried to frame it as miscommunication and bad coping, focused on how cold he had been leading up to the trip. At the end, the host said, "Some listeners are going to say you sound entitled and out of touch with consequences. What would you say to them?" I froze. I wanted to say that I did not know it would cost me everything, that I thought relationships spend. What came out was, well, I'm the one sleeping in a car with a couch frame, so I think I paid enough. They thanked me and ended the call. When the episode dropped, my phone exploded with alerts even though I barely had service. People tagged me, sent me clips. Comments were brutal. She still does not get it. She sounds more upset about the couch than losing her husband. How you not know consequences exist at your big age? Even my brother texted me a link with, "This you," and a laughing emoji. He followed it with, "For real though, your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enabling your bad choices," copying the line our parents used. Seeing it again in that context made my head spin. I had turned my life into content and all it got me was a bigger audience for my worst moments. A few days after the episode, the car was gone. I came out of a gas station bathroom and the spot where I left it was empty. For a second I thought I had parked somewhere else. Then I saw the fresh oil stain and the tire marks. I knew immediately. I called the finance company and they confirmed it. The vehicle has been repossessed. I asked about my belongings. They gave me an address for a lot on the edge of the city. When I got there by bus, a man in a little booth handed me a clipboard and said I had 20 minutes to clear my personal items. I went to the car and opened the doors. The couch pieces were tossed around, cushions smashed, fabric ripped. My clothes were in a heap. I started pulling everything I could into a pile. "You cannot take the big stuff," the man yelled from across the lot. "Personal items only." I stood there holding one of the smaller cushions and realized the main frame and arms were staying. My last symbol of the marriage was now inventory in a repo yard. I left with 2 trash bags of clothes and that one cushion. No couch, no car, no apartment, no job. The only thing that had followed me from the court order was now a square of fabric and foam I carried under my arm. I rode a bus back into the city holding it like a child. People stared. One woman asked, "You moving?" I said, something like that. That night I finally went back to the resource center and put my name on the shelter list. The woman at the desk remembered me. "Ready now?" she asked. I nodded. They found me a spot in a women's shelter across town. When I arrived, they handed me a sheet and pointed to a bunk. I set the cushion on the mattress. One of the women in the room said, "You bringing decor?" I said, "Court ordered," and she laughed without understanding. Lying on that thin mattress with a cushion under my head, I thought about every step that got me there. The lobby couch. The hotel room. The photo on the table. The prenup I did not read. The judge saying car, clothes, couch. The way I dragged that meaning through every new disaster like it would save me. I kept thinking something big would arrive to fix it, some realization or moment that would flip the script. Instead it feels like the big thing that is coming is just more of the same, just heavier, more public, less forgiving. And the wildest part is, a small part of me is still shocked each time life proves it does not bend around my feelings. Nights at the shelter are loud in a quiet way. There is always someone coughing, someone talking in their sleep, someone crying in a corner with a blanket over their head. I keep my little cushion on my bunk like it is a reserved sign. One woman tried to take it the first week. I came back from the shower and saw her lying on it. I said, "That is mine." She said, "You at a shelter, nothing is yours." I grabbed it anyway and she sat up ready to swing. A staff member stepped in and said, "We do not fight over items." She brought that. Now the others call it my divorce pillow. One of them joked, "At least you got some alimony." I laughed in front of them, but later I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding that cushion, thinking about how a judge said car, clothes, couch, and now all I had left of that list was half a couch in the shape of a square. The shelter has rules. You cannot stay during the day unless you are in a program. You cannot plug in devices in random outlets. You cannot bring in outside food without clearing it. I found all this out by breaking each rule once. The first time I tried to charge my half-broken phone at the front desk, the worker unplugged it and said, "You cannot just take power, sign up for a slot." I did not even know power slots were a thing. Another time I brought in leftover ramen from a church pantry and they said if it spilled it would bring bugs. I stood in the hallway with my cup, already hungry, and drank the broth in 3 gulps so it would not go to waste. Was I really at a point in life where electricity and soup had schedules? Was I really supposed to learn a whole new system just to exist? Was I the only one who did not know shelters ran tighter than my old job? One morning a truck pulled up full of donated furniture. Everyone gathered around thinking maybe there would be extra chairs or a small dresser for the common room. When they pulled the tarp back, I saw it. A couch that looked almost exactly like the hotel lobby one. Same worn arms, same flat cushions, same weird pattern. My chest tightened. A volunteer said, "This will be nice in the rec area." Someone yelled, "Couch," and a few women clapped. One of them turned to me and said, "You should break this one in, you got history." I could not move for a second. Then the staff actually asked if anyone wanted to help carry it inside. They were all laughing and talking while they lifted it. I stood off to the side, watching another couch roll past me into a place that already felt like punishment. Was there some kind of joke the universe was telling on repeat? Was I really going to be surrounded by couches for the rest of my life? Was this going to follow me every room I walked into? The first real bizarre moment inside came when one of the women in the shelter pulled me aside with her phone in her hand. She said, "This you?" and hit play on a podcast clip. It was my voice talking about the anniversary couch, the cheating, the divorce. Somebody had cut out the parts where I tried to explain and kept the worst lines. The whole room could hear, because she turned the volume up. "I'm the one sleeping in a car with a couch frame," my own voice said from the tiny speaker. A group formed around her. One woman shook her head and said, "You wild." Another said, "You telling all this to strangers but not to yourself." I tried to say, "It is edited," but my throat felt tight. That night a few of them sat on the new shelter couch and replayed the episode while I pretended to sleep on my bunk with the cushion over my head. Was I really getting roasted by people who barely knew me? Was I really hearing my worst decisions turned into entertainment in the same room I now had to sleep in? Was there any version of me left that was not a story for others to laugh at? A social worker called my name during check-in week 3 and asked me to come to the office. I thought it might be about housing options or a job lead. I sat down and she had a printout in front of her. It was an email from my ex. He had contacted the shelter to make sure they would not give out his information if anyone asked. The social worker said, "We do not share data," but he wanted it noted. He also attached a document. It was a copy of a restraining notice he had filed months earlier, one I had ignored because I did not think he would enforce it. I had forgotten about the part that said I could not contact him through third parties or media. The social worker said, "He mentioned a podcast and some online content. You need to be careful." Hearing that he had reached into this part of my life, into the shelter system, made me feel both angry and small. Was he really still watching from that distance? Was there any corner of my life he had not anticipated? Was I ever going to be somewhere he had not already accounted for? The next consequence came by email again, through the shelter's shared computer. The podcast producer sent a message titled, "Follow Up, Exciting Opportunity." They said the episode had performed well and another platform wanted to license it for a relationship documentary series. There was a line that said, "Unfortunately we cannot offer additional compensation under the original agreement." They also mentioned that my ex had declined to appear on camera but had agreed to provide a written statement. They called him the quiet partner in the story. I stared at the word license and the phrase performed well and realized my mess was going to be packaged again, with no money coming to me, no control over how I would be shown. One of the other women walked by and saw my face. "Bad news?" she asked. I said, "Apparently I am content." She shrugged. "At least somebody getting paid." It was not me. A local influencer came to the shelter one afternoon with a camera crew, announcing they were there to raise awareness. The staff lined us up, the way they do when someone brings donations and wants a photo. I tried to stand in the back. The influencer looked at my face, squinted, and said, "You that couch girl from the podcast, right?" My stomach dropped. I said, "I would rather not be on camera." She laughed and said, "Girl, this your brand now?" She pointed the lens at me anyway, asking, "What is it like starting over?" I turned my head away. The staff member whispered, "Just smile, it helps funding." Later that night I saw a clip on her page. My blurred face, the caption, "Even the worst choices can lead to growth." The comments were full of people arguing whether I had shown any growth at all. Was I really now being used as a before picture in somebody else's positivity post? Was my lowest point now a prop for likes and shares? Was there any place left where I could just exist without being turned into a message? All the attention inside the shelter started causing problems. Some women were tired of hearing my story play in snippets. One of them snapped, "Every time I open my feed, there you are. Turn it off." Another said, "You did that to yourself." There were whispers that I was bringing drama even without doing anything. One night, an argument broke out over the TV. Someone wanted to watch a reality show, someone else wanted the news, and a third person said, "Anything but the couch cheater video." The staff came in and asked who they were talking about. 3 eyes turned toward me. The next day, a counselor pulled me aside and said, "Some residents feel unsettled by the outside attention around you. We might need to move you to another facility if it escalates." I wanted to scream that I had not asked for any of this coverage, that I was just breathing. Instead, I sat there and nodded, feeling my last bit of stability wobble. My parents finally came to see me, but not inside. They asked me to meet them at a park nearby during visiting hours. My mom brought a bag of toiletries and some snacks. She placed the bag on the bench without hugging me. My dad stood a few feet away with his hands in his pockets. My mom said, "We saw the video." I asked which one. She said, "All of them." My dad said, "You keep telling your side, but you never say the simple truth straight. You cheated on your husband on your anniversary and made him sleep on a couch. Everything after that is fallout." I said, "I did not know it would cost this much." My mom shook her head. "You were told over and over your actions have consequences and we can't help you with it or enabling your bad choices. Now the whole world is saying it to you." They left after 20 minutes. They did not even ask to see where I slept. Walking back to the shelter with that bag in my hand, I realized they were giving me soap and snacks instead of shelter and calling it love. A flyer went up on the shelter bulletin board one morning saying funding might be cut in the next quarter. It said services could be reduced or locations consolidated. People started speculating about which beds would be lost, which programs would close. One of the staff members admitted to me in a low voice that this building was on the list. I did the math in my head. No apartment, no car, no job, and now maybe no bunk. The city that used to be a backdrop for date nights and brunch runs was now just a map of corners I could be pushed into. I kept waiting for a call from some miracle job or a message from someone saying they had space at their place. Instead, the only consistent contact I had was notifications about new comments under my podcast clip and periodic emails from the platform about their growth numbers. The last strange hit, at least for now, came on a regular Tuesday. A volunteer called my name and handed me an envelope. It looked official. I opened it and saw a stack of papers with my name at the top. It was a notice from a small production company saying they were pursuing rights to dramatize the podcast episode and that any further public statements I made could affect ongoing negotiations and portrayals. There was also a paragraph reminding me of what I had signed originally, and a line suggesting I refrain from contradictory narratives. A note from my ex's lawyer was attached, saying they reserved the right to respond to any future content. I read the pages twice in the noisy common room, then folded them back into the envelope. A woman across from me asked, "What now?" I said, "Apparently my worst week might become a movie." She laughed and said, "You famous?" I said, "Not the kind that pays rent." That night I lay on the bunk with my cushion under my head, listening to someone snore and someone else whisper into a phone, and I thought about how my life had shrunk and spread at the same time. I had fewer things, fewer options, fewer places I was welcome, but more strangers than ever knew my name and my ugliest decisions. I kept thinking a big moment would come where it all clicked into place or reversed somehow. Instead, the big thing keeps showing up as another form, another piece of paper, another screen, another door closing, another bet I might lose. And right now, I am just here in this Atlanta shelter, holding onto a cushion from a couch I got in a divorce I caused, waiting to see what hits next, with no sign that any of it is slowing down.